Hi everyone, I'm just doing a few settings to get ready for the webinar, and we'll start in just a couple of minutes. Hi everyone, my name is Amy Salazar. I am on the team for the National Research Collaborative for Foster Alumni in Higher Ed. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. I'd like to ask you all to please keep your videos off during the webinar. And we're going to be using the chat box to type in questions. And I also wanted to make sure everyone knows that we will be recording this webinar and making it available on the NRC FAHE website in the near future. So this webinar is part of the National Research Collaborative for Foster Alumni in Higher Ed web series. My name's Amy Salazar. I'm an assistant professor at Washington State University, and I'm on the leadership team for the collaborative. I just want to do a quick mention of our next webinar that's coming up in April. So our next webinar is Monday, April 29th. It's 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And the presenter will be Toni Watt. She's a professor at Texas State University Department of Sociology. And her presentation will share some results of studies that examine student waivers, access, challenges related to access, and also calls for states to attend to the implementation and uptake of their state waiver program. Okay, so just to give you an idea about how the webinar will work, the first, our presenter will present for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A time. For that Q&A time, we will we'll ask you to hold, or we'll do questions at the end. If you do have questions that you think about as the presenter is presenting, you can go ahead and type those in the chat box, but we will wait until the end and I'll go through those questions with our presenter. We may also have some time for, if our presenter has questions that she wants to present to the group, we may use the raising hand function, where you raise your hand if you'd like to respond to the presenter, and then I would unmute. Okay, so our presenter today is Eunice Matthews-Armstead, and she's a professor of social work at Eastern Connecticut State University, and she'll be presenting on some research that she's been doing and also her campus support program. So I will hand it over to you, Eunice.
Okay. I have yes, and here. Okay. All right, well, welcome everyone. I am very excited to have this opportunity to come and share my work with individuals like myself who are concerned about the well-being and life outcomes of these remarkable young people. Although I'm new to the intellectual discourse regarding foster youth in higher ed, I am not new to the challenges of foster youth. Before entering the academy many years ago, I worked for more than 10 years in child welfare in New York City, in preventive, foster care, and adoption services and independent living services. I've been both a worker and an administrator. In addition to currently being a professor and director of social work at Eastern, I have a private practice where my areas of specialty are adolescence, complex developmental trauma, and borderline personality disorder. So my interest in these young people represents an integration of past experience, my clinical interests, and the reason why I became a social worker in the first place. I'm approaching the end of the first year of the pilot that I will be discussing with you, and I would very much appreciate your questions and feedback, for I am in this for the long haul, and I'm committed to trying to make a valuable contribution to the discourse that will hopefully benefit these young people that I think of as hidden treasures. So, on the campuses across this country, there is a hidden population of young adults formerly or currently involved in the child welfare system, hidden partly by choice due to the stigma they feel because of the foster youth identity, and partly because, as wards of the state, their status is legally protected information, which presents a unique challenge for those of us who are trying to do programming. What I'll be discussing today is the pilot program, and I will speak briefly in order to provide a context with some of the challenges that foster care alumni face regarding educational attainment. Then I will describe to you how foster youth are responded to in Connecticut with the Department of Children and Family Services Scholarship Program. And then I will share some key influences that came into play in the development of this pilot program, such as the focus group that I conducted, as well as some of the theoretical influences that guided my work. Then I will share the design, the goals, and the components of the program, and I will end the discussion by talking about the student participants and some of the activities that we've done and plan to do. So, as I'm sure many of you know, in any given year, there's somewhere around 400,000 children in care, with a disproportionate number of children of color in the system. We also must recognize that this number does not reflect the reality that many of the children enter and re-enter the system. Let's just say that the child welfare system in this country touches many lives of the children that we come in contact with. For a number of different reasons, there is a segment of the children that never return home. Some go into kinship care, others adoption. Some enter the system during adolescence. Whatever the reason, they remain in the system until young adulthood. For those young people who age out of the system, their life outcomes tend to be bleak. The fact that approximately 66% of the children that age out in a given year will be homeless, court-involved, or dead after a year after discharge gives us a reason to pause as we contemplate the wasted human capital. As we contemplate how to respond to the needs of these young people, we consider the challenges that they must overcome. For our purposes, particularly as it relates to educational experiences, such as the fact that foster youth are more likely to have experienced frequent school changes, failing grades, received out-of-school suspension, 3 times more likely to be expelled, more likely to be in special ed, and less likely to have taken college prep courses. Given this reality, it is no wonder that their graduation rates fall well below the nation. What is more remarkable, though, is the hopefulness that is implied by the fact that 84% of them express the desire to go to college. So when I think about the 20% who, despite educational challenges, trauma history, fragile social networks, limited instrumental supports, and a general lack of knowledge, somehow manage to show up, to cross the thresholds of institutions of higher learning. The challenge that I and many others are grappling with is, once they come, how do we get them to stay and to finish? Now, in Connecticut, we have a very generous scholarship program for foster and adopted youth. They are eligible, their eligibility is really simple. They have to be accepted to a full-time program. They have to maintain a 2.0 once they're in the program, and annually document their enrollment and grades to DCF. And in exchange, they get approximately $24,000 a year. Now, this is based on the state tuition for one of our mid-size institutions. The other thing that's kind of tricky in regards to the awards is that the awards vary based on whether they were adopted, whether they were in foster care, or whether they are subsidized guardians. And that means people who were under the care of DCF, and DCF relinquishes the care to a guardian. The guardian is often a relative, but sometimes it does not have to be. And they're not eligible for the scholarship program, which I find really interesting, but they are eligible to receive their subsidies, which turns out to about $7,000 a year. The interesting thing is that the adopted children get a larger subsidy in that their tuition is based on the tuition for UConn, which is higher than the other 4 CSUs. So let's talk about Eastern, which is where I am. Eastern is one of the 5 state universities in Connecticut. It is the smallest of the 5. It is primarily a residential campus, and its standards for admission are higher than the other 4 CSUs, but not UConn. So we've had, since 2011 to 2018, we've only had about 56 students enrolled between that time that we've been able to identify. And as you see, of those 56, only 20% graduated. 39% continue to be enrolled, and 41% withdrew or received an academic dismissal. If you look to the right, you'll also notice that 47.8% of those 23 students stayed either one semester or less. So we've got them coming in, but we still need to figure out how to get them to persist. So when I discovered this, I went on to say, well, I need to figure out what's going on. How can we help these young people? So I decided to ask them and to conduct a focus group for the foster youth. I sent out individual invitations to all of the identified foster youth on campus, because I'm being very careful to respect their privacy as I try to engage them to help us to understand how to help them. Of the 20-something invitations that I sent out, I got 6 positive responses and 5 students that actually participated in the focus group. As you see, 1 was male, 4 females, 2 were freshmen, 1 was sophomore, 1 was a senior, and 1 was a graduate student who had graduated from Eastern, but was also attending one of our graduate programs. The discussion group was taped and transcribed, and the participants, also to protect their anonymity, were provided with numbers that were placed in front of them, and they were asked to refer to each other as numbers. The discussion was scheduled to last for 2 hours, but it actually went on for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I also, served pizza to try to also, entice them. I was pleasantly surprised by the students' attitude regarding their participation. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are the questions that I asked them. And during the focus group, like I was saying, I was very surprised, but happy that the students' attitude in regard to participating was very positive. They expressed feeling that they were glad that someone on campus had recognized them as a unique group of students. And but when we first began the discussion, they were a little hesitant to speak, and required some encouragement. But like I said, we went 45 minutes over. As they began to feel a little bit more comfortable. They started to talk a lot more. And as you see, these are some of the questions that I used as prompts for the discussion. So I got a lot of data from the focus group, but what I did was, excuse me, I pulled together that information that we received from the focus group transcripts that I thought more directly spoke to the issue of program development. The coding of the data was done by myself and two students that are working with me on the research project. One is an undergrad and one is a grad student. So after we coded all of the data, we put together, identified themes, and so on. So one of the things that we identified was the idea of challenges that all of the students expressed they had when entering college. For example, like one of the students that I'm rushing to college, I had a lot of rules. I didn't have freedom. So coming to college where I could basically do whatever I wanted was kind of too much for me. And then another one was like, I was like so to myself. I don't know if that was because I was used to being reserved. I would kind of hold back from everything. And the rest of the students had similar comments and statements to talk about how difficult it was to make the adjustment. And that will cut across those that were in adopted homes and those that were not, and that had just been in foster home. And one was came from a residential when she left college. The other thing that I thought was interesting was when we talked about how they thought their experiences impacted on who they were and where they were and their ability to get to college. And I was impressed at how they were able to speak kind of positively about their experiences. So they weren't talking about feeling wounded. They talked about that their experiences made them more mature, made them stronger, more compassionate. They felt that they were different from the other students that were on campus because of what they had gone through. But the differences was like a double-edged sword, and you'll see later on how it played out negatively, that feeling of being different. The other thing that they talked about a lot, and that was the feeling of being, of needing to be independent and thinking of it as something that was very important. They strongly believed that being independent said something positive about themselves, and it was critical for them to maintain. And for them, obtaining assistance was always a last resort. And only a few were able to talk about it in terms of their general lack of trust of others based on their past experiences. And that was the two older women in the group that were able to engage in that level of self-reflection, which was also interesting. The other younger members just understood it as a given, and it was like a way to be. Listening to them talk, I knew that it was something that they had all integrated into their general way of being in the world. It was like their mantra for life. I'm thinking in the terms of programming and recognizing that engaging them in a program that's designed to provide them with support and assistance may be a challenge, or at least I thought it would be a challenge in terms of help thinking. The other thing that came out, and this goes back to what I was saying about their experiences being providing them with positive skills and positive perception of themselves as being strong and capable in one way. But then on the other side, it also made them feel very uncomfortable. They talked a lot about, like in one of the statements that I have here, it's very uncomfortable for me to share my background. Another one said, it's kind of weird getting to know someone and feeling awkward about sharing your past and your family background. Not knowing what's too much to say or if someone will understand. And I know there are tons of other foster kids, and that there are probably a lot of foster kids on campus, but you always kind of feel like you're different. And like maybe you won't be able to make meaningful connections with other people. And part of that was because they had this like turmoil going on in terms of how much they should share or not share. So they found themselves sort of hiding part of themselves, which also made it awkward and challenging when they were trying to make connections. So again, that informed the development of the pilot that I will be talking about to you in a few moments. The other thing was, when I say motivated by ghosts, we asked them what was driving them and what motivated them. And all of them had they were negatively motivated. They talked about their desire to be different and how, excuse me, and like they said, I just don't, different from their families of origin, different from their parents. And that was something that they all expressed. The two older participants talked about it, again, in more reflective terms, with maybe even a hint of empathy towards their parents. And the two younger female participants, interestingly enough, you can still see a hint of anger, and they're still working on how they were going to construct in their minds and in their experiences their connection to their parents. And that mostly manifests itself by the way they talked about their parents as losers or worthless, or they're addicts and they didn't accomplish anything or whatever. So I felt that was very interesting. And also looking at the contrast between the older students, the senior and the graduate student, and the other two women. The one male in the group didn't have, he did talk about, wanting to have a different kind of life, but he didn't talk much in terms of his parents. I really didn't get a sense of, how he saw his parents. What was apparent was that the challenges of their early lives were still very present for them. I could not define it necessarily as trauma, given the limited time and the discussion, but it was clear that they had ghosts in their nursery and that this was something that they were carrying into their current experiences. So then, in terms of the program model, so I use the voices of the young people along with the literature, of course, the idea of social identity theory, self-authorship, and student involvement, which is the student involvement theory is about, retention and persistence amongst students in the general population, but I thought it was very appropriate and a good fit for this program as well. The self-authorship I felt was important because I'm thinking about the students and how they narrate their stories, and as a clinician thinking is how they construct their narrative will dictate their way of negotiating and navigating their present world. So by helping them to examine their personal narrative and to embrace it and also make adjustments where necessary would be an important aspect of the program. And then, of course, social identity theory was, about the whole importance of community and about the significance of being an in-group and them connecting with one another, also to address the issue of, feeling different. So the program that I designed, the other thing is that I asked them to help me to come up with a name, and they were unsuccessful, but they appreciated my suggestion for calling it the Academic Success Program. They were clear that they didn't want, and I didn't think it would be appropriate either, to have anything about foster youth or DCF scholarship in the name or description of the program. Because I kind of felt that might also deter people from other students from participating. So the model is a collaboration between the social work program, which is my program on campus, and one of the DCF site offices, and the BSW interns. The BSW interns are interning both in the DCF site office and, of course, on campus. The on-campus part of the program is under my supervision, and the DCF part is under the supervision of the field instructors. I engaged the site office, the DCF site office, which is our Department of Children and Families, because one, it helps us to get around the idea of confidentiality, because as BSW interns for DCF, they have access to the records because they are interning and they're looked upon as in-agency individuals. And so that also helps in terms of reaching out to their caseworkers and things like that, and finding out who their caseworkers are, because our information isn't always accurate. And and DCF has been very, very supportive of the program. Now, the actual program, the Academic Success Program, is a primary prevention program designed to respond to the issues of social isolation and achievement stress among Eastern students that are enrolled in the DCF scholarship program. But it's also open to students that are not involved in the DCF scholarship program, but who have had involvement in the foster care system. We haven't figured out a way to flag those students, but we're hoping in the future to be able to open it up to them as well. Based on the students' attitudes and who they are, the program has a very strong strength-based perspective. in terms of the structure of the program, how we respond to the students, and because we look at the students as being resilient and determined and outstanding individuals and we want to help them transform the life skills that they had developed to get them to this point into academic success. Like for example, when we did the initial recruiting, which was like 2 weeks after the start of the semester, I showed a TED Talk on grit and what is grit, and saying that I felt that they all had some level of grit and that I thought that they were amazing and awesome, because I do. As I had mentioned, the program is a primary prevention program, so we're designed around, not around dysfunction, but around strength. It is a voluntary program and the students can choose to participate or not. And we want to empower them, we want to expand their social support system, help them to learn how to thrive as students, and to eventually in their professions. The focus, the targets are what we will hopefully eventually look to measure is the issue of soft authorship, social connectedness, and institutional connectedness. Right. Okay. The program has 3 components, and that's the outreach component, the direct services, and that's where the BSW interns are also, they engage in individual counseling and meeting with the participants in the program. And during which time they help them to develop their organizational skills and also whatever it is the student wants to work on. When they initiate the contact, they come up with some goals that the student wants support in, and then that drives the contacts after that. And then we also have a community building aspect of the program to bring them together so that they can have a space to support each other. So as you see, currently in the program, I have 14 students that are enrolled, and you see 9 students that are not enrolled. We've started in September of this semester, so we've had 1 complete semester so far. But as you see, the students in the enrolled and the non-enrolled don't look that different. So, you know, but we're also like very new. We do have about 6 of the 14 students that are engaged in regular bi-weekly individual counseling sessions. We had 7 students show for our end of the semester holiday party, and the remaining students have had at least 1 to 3 contacts with the individual, counselor, and a couple of them have said that they didn't feel that they needed the individual, but they will, when we do stuff, group stuff, that they would be very happy to participate in that. One of the things during the semester, we have a success story and a non-success story. One of our participants, 2 of our participants have withdrew from the university. One because of substance abuse, and she was in treatment, we got her treatment, but it was too much to try to manage school and her trying to gain her sobriety, so she withdrew. The other student, she suffered from some emotional challenges and decided to withdraw for the semester, for the spring semester, but is planning on returning in the fall. Our individual counselor is continuing contact with that person. Also, we had another student that was not one of the consistently in contact students, And this semester, he did not do well. He was one of the freshmen. He did not do well. He's on academic probation and has decided to engage more frequently and is seeing the individual counselor on a regular basis. Like I said, we had a welcoming session about 2 weeks in, which was well attended, and that was a good start in terms of recruiting. All the people who showed for the session signed up to participate. We have now 7 individuals who signed up for the regular one-on-one. I thought it was 6, but it's 7. And we had 7 to attend the holiday party. We also did a presentation. We had 5 students go with us to the DCF site office to talk to the juniors and seniors who are in care, and to give them some information and to share with them their experiences and hopefully to inspire them. And that went over very well. The students wanted to do it again, and they're going to do it again this spring semester. And then in the future, we have planning some bowling and kickball game and the end of the semester picnic. The next steps are one of the things that the 2 of our very high functioning students who are doing well academically asked could they do more peer-to-peer outreach and to become more involved in the service provision part of the program. And so we're thinking about ways to engage them in that way. We also want to develop and apply for some additional funding and collaborate with other campus programs. Central also has a campus program for fostered youth, which is one of our sister schools, and to develop a robust evaluation methodology. The other thing what I will be doing is I will be interviewing, doing in-depth interviews with those that participate in the program this year and those who did not, and doing some comparing and then continuing to follow them. So thank you so much for listening. Any suggestions that you may have regarding measurement tools to use for the program evaluation would be helpful. Any other social activities that you think that you may have tried or have heard of that would be good for the students, and any curriculum material for the group sessions would be much appreciated as well. But again, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Eunice. I appreciate your presentation. So I'll ask everyone now to please go ahead and type any questions that you have into the chat box. I'll review, or I'll go over questions that people have first, and then after we do that, I will pose the questions that Dr. Matthews-Armstead has posed individually, and we'll see if people want to give feedback on those. But let's first do any questions that you all have. So the first question that we have is, who is your direct support staff with the students?
I'm not sure what direct support. The BSW interns and myself, I think, if that's what you're asking.
I would think that she was talking, or the person was talking about when you were saying that the direct, I'm not looking at the slide, or I can't see the slide, but when you're talking about the direct service provision piece.
Yeah, those are the BSW interns.
Okay. And how many interns do you have? And I'll add to that kind of how many, the question is how many interns do you have, and I'll add how many students is each intern working with?
Well, I have 3 interns working. I initially had 1 at 4, but the other person wasn't able to continue. So I have 3, and they each have, they have a caseload of about 5 per student, and they have, because even if they're not active, they're still on their caseload. And they're, you know, to reach out. So like when we do a group event, they will reach out to their students. But each of the students, depending on the participation of the individuals, they have about 2 or 3 that they see on a regular basis each.
Okay. So another question is, what do you think the peer-to-peer outreach component might look like?
Well, what we had done was to take the students, the participants with us, and they talked. We did an exercise, a group exercise with the juniors and seniors that were at the DCF site, and then broke out and they talked to them individually. I wanted to also do more in terms of when the students come for, let's say, Admitted Students Day. We have students that are thinking about coming and they haven't made their final decision to come to Eastern, to have a special session of those students that are thinking about coming to Eastern that are involved with DCF, and then engaging the students in that. And also having them run some of the social activities and develop some of the social activities.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So another question is, how many times per week do the students meet with the BSW?
Let's see, it varies from once every other week to, like, with the one who was on academic probation, she's meeting with him every week. Well, initially she was meeting with him twice a week, now she's meeting with him every week. So it really varies depending on what the student, the participant requires and asks for.
Okay. So another question we have is, do you have any connections with local community colleges that foster youth might be coming from?
No, not yet, but that is something that I want to do, because we do get a lot of transfers. We have a special program in Connecticut, we call it Pathways. So that making it easier for students to make the transition to the community colleges to the 4 years. So, and it has raised significantly the number of transfer students that we have. So I haven't had an opportunity to reach out to them, but it is in my plan to do so.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that have been posted. So now what I'm going to do is, oh, hold on, one more. Did the students create goals, or is there a specific layout that you use, or that interns use in their work with students?
No, it's a collaborative process like what you would do with anything. One of the students introduced, it's hard, okay. The participants talk about what it is they want to achieve or get out of the individual counseling session. The interns also introduce things such as, the self-authorship kinds of things as they see fit. So it's like a collaborative process, but it's primarily driven by the participant.
Okay, thank you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn us back to these 3 questions that were posed. So there's, so Eunice asks, are there any suggestions regarding measurement tools for program evaluation, any suggestions regarding other social activities, and any suggestions regarding curriculum materials for group sessions? So you can, if you have ideas about that, you can type those in, but also if you want to, in the chat box there is a raise your hand button, and if you'd like to I can unmute you if you're interested in sharing some of your ideas for feedback at this point. if you use the raise your hand. And Eunice, would you mind, I'm noticing that I don't see your email address, so if people want to reach out to you later, can you tell me what that is and I can type it into the chat box so everybody has it?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot. It's Matthews, Matthews,
Mm-hmm.
at Eastern, C as in cat, T as in Tom, .edu.
Okay, great. So one person did send a suggestion. They were talking about social activities. So they said, as for social activities, we do programming for Mother's Day and also an invite during Thanksgiving time. So that's one suggestion for social activities. And for the person who typed that in, I'm curious what kind of programming you do, particularly for Mother's Day, just since that can be kind of a sensitive one for youth and care. What does that look like exactly? Or what kind of things, activity do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So for the Mother's Day event, it says we do a social event with limited time reflecting on what Mother's Day means to the students. Okay, so it sounds like kind of doing a little bit of processing around what could be potentially a challenging holiday for some students to go through. Okay.
Okay, I see.
Okay, well, I don't see any other comments coming in, so we might wrap up at this time. But I just want to thank everyone for coming, and please, for other ideas that you have, please definitely reach out to Dr. Matthews and share those thoughts with her. And also, if you're interested in our next webinar, I'd encourage you to sign up, register for that. And we'll be posting the recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint on the website soon. So thank you all so much for coming today.
Yes, thank you.